Well, the war in Ukraine and how to end it will be high on the agenda of the G20 Summit, which is underway in South Africa. It's the first G20 to be held on the African continent. Let's go back to Haru Mutasa once again. She's in Johannesburg. So, Haru, set the scene for us of this summit in South Africa, the first one in Africa. Who's there, who's attending, and who's not?
Well, South Africa's president has just opened the summit and he's addressed the world leaders that are here and other delegates. And he stressed to people in the room that it's important that this summit mustn't fail. The world leaders mustn't let the entire world down. They must come up with some kind of declaration. He's implied that he seemed confident that there will be a declaration or some kind of declaration at the end of the summit, which ends on Sunday. Most of the world leaders of the G20 are here, except for the likes of the president of Argentina. The president of China is not here. He sent the premier of China. And of course, US President Donald Trump is not here. But Ramaphosa stressed that it's a very difficult presidency for him heading the G20. He says that there have been a lot of issues that the world leaders have had to overcome. But he also stressed that even though the US is not here, the world leaders that are here must be able to show the world that things can move on without America being in the room. To give an idea of some of the challenges that they've had to face in terms of the wording of the declaration, for example, this diagram here, it's quite basic, but it gives you an idea of the tug of war that could have been happening behind the scenes. Here you have Ramaphosa, the SA president, and the president of Brazil on one side. You have Trump here on the other side, fighting over the issue of global inequality. In the middle there, you have other world leaders sitting there saying, what do we do? What decisions do we make? Do we side with SA and make sure there's a declaration, or do we do what Trump wants and make sure there's no kind of declaration? Again, I stress, Ramaphosa seems confident that there will be a declaration issued at the end of this summit. It has been tense moments for South Africa because they know that Trump was not happy SA was hosting the summit, but it seems like the mood is confident, there's optimism in the air, and people wait and see on Sunday if a declaration will be issued.
Well, talk to us about the issues that are going to be discussed at the G20, this summit in South Africa. And if there is no declaration, what happens?
Well, there'll be a number of issues. I mean, there are various wars going on around the world, the Ukraine war, the war in Gaza, also several conflicts, for example, in Africa, Sudan, DRC, and other places as well. So those things will likely also top the agenda. But this is the first G20 on the African continent. So President Ramaphosa wants to try and stress the needs of the developing world, like global inequality, like debt restructuring, making sure that the global south, the developing nations, have a greater say in global matters, in decisions made by these world leaders. It will not be easy, of course. If there's no declaration, we could see a chairperson statement, which will basically be a document which will outline what countries have agreed on and what countries haven't agreed on. SA does not want this to happen. They want a declaration. So a lot of work still needs to be put in place in terms of finding a way forward. But again, Ramaphosa has been saying that he is confident. SA has put in the work, and he hopes that the world leaders here at the G20 will side with SA and issue a declaration at the end of the summit on Sunday.
SA being South Africa, of course, Haru. Now, the US takes over the G20 presidency next year, but as you said, Trump is boycotting this summit. So who will President Ramaphosa hand over to?
Well, over the last few days, he's been joking that he may have to hand over to an empty chair. We've heard from the local media here in South Africa that the U.S. Embassy here in South Africa has suggested sending a delegation. There's no ambassador yet. That person hasn't arrived, so some lower-ranking official in the embassy would be at the final closing ceremony to accept the gavel when SA hands over. But we've also heard from some South African officials that Ramaphosa will not hand over to a low-level diplomat. So it's a wait and see what happens then. But regardless of what happens, the US, the United States, will take over the presidency next year. So whatever is decided here, whatever the leaders talk about and put on paper, when Trump takes over, he could just say, I agree with this, I don't agree with this, this is rubbish, I will not pay attention to this issue. So a lot depends really on what Trump is going to do when the US takes over the G20 presidency next year.
Thank you very much, Haru, for that. Haru Mutasa, live in Johannesburg, covering the G20 Summit for us.
Don't miss out. Get the full picture. Subscribe to Al Jazeera for reliable news, expert insight. Like, share, stay ahead.